In this lesson, we're going to understand the concept of a constructor. Now, what exactly is a constructor? A constructor in a class is a special method that constructs the class. In other words, when you are trying to create an instance of the class, then the constructor is what gives Java instructions on how to go about making that instance. Now, when we look at the zombie class, we didn't actually create a constructor for the zombie class, but there actually was a constructor. At runtime, Java added what is known as a default constructor. So when we ran our program, automatically a constructor was added. Now that is the constructor that we called when we looked at the zombie game class. All right, in line 3, when we said new zombie, we were actually calling a method, and that method was called zombie. And we know this was a method call because of the round brackets. Whenever you see the round brackets, you know there's some method being called. Now, so we called the default constructor that was created for us by Java. Now let's see what that default constructor actually would look like. So the default constructor of this class, usually it's good practice to put your constructors at the top of the class. Remember, a constructor is always public. And there, that's pretty much what the default constructor that Java created for us looks like. But we're not restricted to the default constructor. Let's say we wanted to create instances of the zombie class that from their very inception already have a value set. For example, we want to create zombies that have various strength value sets. So we want to create certain zombies that have a strength of 5 and some that have a strength of 10 from their construction. So we will create a separate constructor which will actually accept an argument or a parameter. This will work very similar to the setter. So now this constructor is a one arg constructor, one argument constructor. It receives one set of data, which is an integer variable, and we're calling it strength here. We're calling it strength so that we know that it actually corresponds to that strength. Whatever value is coming from here or coming to this constructor will be used to set the value of strength for this particular zombie. All right. And that's how it's done. This dot strength is equal to strength. Now we can access the strength variable directly here, even though it's private, because we're trying to access it from the same class. So any variable that's private is accessible from within the class that it's in, but not from out of the class. Now we're going to save this, and we're going to create a new zombie called Z3. The only difference is we're going to pass it a value. Unlike the other two zombies that we created, that we instantiated, we did not pass them any values. This one we're passing it a value. Now when we pass it a value, Java will automatically detect that because there is an integer value, it will not use the no-arg constructor. The default constructor is going to use the constructor that takes in an integer. Java does this matching for us. All right, let's save that and compile it. Okay, it compiles perfectly, but running it will not serve any purpose because we're not actually doing any outputs. So let's do an output. We'll simply system out the value of strength for Z3. All right, there we go, 10, 5, 15. That's the value that we set for Z3. Now in the same way, you can create any number of constructors depending on the number of variables that you have in your class and how many of those variables and which of them you'd want to set when the class is being constructed.